Our first persuasive speech finalist is Robert Cantrell. Robert, if you'd come on up and share with us your speech.
How is everybody? Well, before I'd like to start, I'd also like to thank General Franks for having me, and Warren, because he's left a positive impact on my life that I didn't really think anybody could. So, thank you to you too. Let's get this thing underway. Recently, a family friend of ours, who is a single mother raising 2 children, lost her job and was forced to work at Walmart, coincidentally the largest employer that pays their employees a minimum wage. Now, upon working there for just over 2 months, she found that she wasn't able to support herself and her 2 children through the utility bills, costs of food, and just in general, meeting ends. So, unfortunately, after those short 2 months, she was thrust out onto the streets and expected to raise herself and her children with no repercussions. Surprisingly, this situation isn't abnormal. All across the nation, while we're sitting here enjoying fantastic speeches by fantastic teenagers, single mothers are feeling the brute force that minimum wage has to offer. Therefore, I've come to the conclusion that we need to raise the minimum wage to $9 an hour. Now, I've come to this conclusion through 2 different areas of analysis. The first is that by raising the minimum wage, it would help recover the economy from the previous recession. And 2 is that it would ultimately help the working families of America. So, to start off with, let's go ahead and look at our first area of analysis, which is that by raising the minimum wage, it would help recover the economy from the economic recession that the economy felt in 2008. Now, Chicago Fed 13 states that by raising the minimum wage to just $9 an hour, we would see an increase in consumer spending by $28 billion. Now, I don't know about you, but common sense tells me that $28 billion is a good amount of money to go into our GDP. If you don't believe common sense, Investopedia 14 states that if the GDP is rising, then the economy is on track and the nation is doing well. If the GDP is falling, then the economy is in trouble and the nation is losing ground. Now, if the GDP was to rise, we would see a lot of different impacts in our everyday lives. Take into consideration how many taxes we need to pay, to the quality of our infrastructure, to the clothes on our back. It would solve a good amount of problems. Not only that, but it would also reduce the amount of employee turnovers that companies all across the nation are facing today. Michael Reich performed a research study in 2013 that found in a San Francisco airport there was an employee turnover rate of 95%. Now, after that airport raised their wage from $7 to $10 an hour, that rate drastically dropped all the way down to 19%. Now, let's take that number that companies all across the United States are facing and multiply it by the amount of employees nationwide. What we would begin to see is not only an employee turnover rate reduced in individual companies, but all across the country. Not only would we be reducing unemployment, but we would also be increasing the quality of work and effort that employees put forth. And as we all know, when the effort of a said employee is increased, so is the output of said product. Now, just as recovering the economy has importance, so does investing in the working families of America. Or should I say, parents of America. Economics.com 14 states that out of all the people on minimum wage, 60% of those people are women. One half of those women are single mothers raising children on their own. As I stand here today, the least that I can hope for is that you guys see a new light on the situation that 27 million people are pushing through every single day. TimeForARaise.com 14 says that they calculated the annual income of a person on a $7.25 minimum wage. The annual income was $14,500. Now, after doing and calculating an annual cost of living general throughout the country, they found that besides housing and miscellaneous items, there is a leftover $1,000 for each category. Now, these categories can include groceries, they can include utility bills, healthcare, and transportation. I don't know about you, but I spend about $500 on groceries a month, let alone a year. Personally, I can't imagine living in a situation that these people are going through. Now, after all of that math is done, they have roughly $0 to put back into their bank accounts to save up for education for their children or education for themselves to give themselves a better quality life or health care. Now, The opposition of this argument seems to be standing from a small business standpoint. And while I can understand that, most of the majority doesn't seem to be paying attention to the individual person. The person that is going through this quote-unquote life that they have to endure every single day. Nobody seems to pay any attention to this poverty-ridden lifestyle that we have given the label of minimum wage. To me, personally, raising the minimum wage isn't about the economy. It isn't about small businesses. It isn't about any of that stuff. It's about the individual person. It's a consolation prize for the backbone of our country, because I personally know that without them, we would be nothing. So by and large, we looked at two main areas of analysis in this speech. The first was that by raising the minimum wage, we would see a recovery of the economy from the economic recession of 2008. And second is that it would ultimately help the working families or parents of America. The next time that minimum wage comes up in your conversations, your thoughts, or even your voting ballot, I urge you to not think of the negative impacts, but instead of the 27 million people that are thrust out onto the streets and expected to raise themselves and their children with no repercussions, just like my family friend. Thank you.